One person said that the Confederate capital was thrown into a paralyzation of excitement by the arrival of the New Orleans Zouaves, as unique and picturesque looking Frenchmen as ever delighted the oculars of Napoleon III. And so they were happy to see him. They said also, though, that on their way to Richmond, their diet consisted of crackers, cheese, and whiskey. Okay, these guys, are they're ready for fun. Let's put it that way. So I have to say, when Virginia left the Union on 17 April 1861, everyone kind of focused on two places, Washington, D.C., and of course, Hampton Roads, because of all the U.S. government facilities here, Gosport Navy Yard, Fort Monroe. And so, it becomes a point of honor to be assigned here. The Zouaves, when they arrived on the battlefield of Big Bethel, William White of the Richmond Howitzers commented, "A Louisiana regiment arrived 1 hour after the fight was over. They are a fine-looking set of fellows." But others, like George Wills of the 1st North Carolina, noted that the Zouaves are the worst-looking men you ever saw in your life. They all had on leggings, wore red pants with about 3 times as much cloth in them as necessary, and a long red bag for a cap. They burnt black as mulattoes. Well, this is just one of the units that come. You see, prior to the Civil War, there was this great craze, and the craze was known as the Zouave Craze. During the French occupation of Algeria, there were Berber tribesmen that served as Zouave units. They wore baggy pants, nice little jacket, and they were fierce and dangerous. And the French go, wow, it's the clothing that makes them that way. And so they have several units that will be in the French Army during the Crimean War. In fact, George Britton McClellan, who observes the Crimean War, will say that the French Zouaves are the finest type of light infantry in the world. Well, this is like excitement. And so back here in America, we are going to get caught up in the craze. I mean, just check these. Oh, wow. You have to. We'll see even better uniforms. This is Elmer Ellsworth, and he is prior to the war, he is in command of the Chicago National Cadets. And so what they do is they run around doing these drills, but they wear Zouave uniforms. They give all their orders in French. And they have this, I don't know if anyone's seen the Foreign Legion march, but they have this low stride. That's what the Zouaves had. So this guy becomes a hero prior to the war. He travels throughout the nation doing these great drills. Everyone goes, wow, this is before TV, of course. And everyone was so excited about it. And so he becomes a hero in his own times for making the Zouave craze extend far beyond his own unit. Now, Ellsworth is actually a law clerk for Abraham Lincoln before the war. And so they are actually very good friends. So he actually went to Algeria in 1858 to study the French Zouaves there in action. So he realized this was not only stylish, but it gave an élan, a feeling that, yes, we'll take that hill. And it's all because of the fezzes they wore, I think, they thought. So I have to tell you that, as we know, the Zouaves were fearless, and they also had this tremendous light infantry drill. Now, Ellsworth is, as soon as the war breaks out, he organizes a regiment in New York known as the 11th New York volunteer regiment, also known as the Fire Zouaves. So Ellsworth goes in the fire department and say, "You want to be with me? You know, this look what you get to wear. This is what we're going to do," and they all get excited. And so, unfortunately for Ellsworth, he epitomizes this daring and bravery, and so he's reassigned. His unit is assigned to Washington, D.C. And actually, at the White House, you could look across the river into Alexandria, and over this one hotel was this huge Confederate flag. And this flag could be seen from the White House using binoculars. It was like staring, everyone in their face. So what happens is on 24 May, 1861, the Ellsworth will go to the Jackson Hotel and decide to take down that flag. He has with him Private Francis Brunel, and the owner of the hotel, James W. Jackson, says, "If anyone taints that flag, I will be killed before they desecrate it." Oh my gosh. Well, he shouldn't have said that. So anyway, they're coming down the stairs. Oh my gosh. And there's Jackson, and Jackson's not happy. So he sees Ellsworth, and he's a double barrel shotgun. He shoots him in the heart. He dies. Brunel's there, and Brunel hits Jackson's shotgun, so he misses Brunel, and Brunel then shoots him in the face, and then before he even falls to the ground, he bayonets him several times. And so it was not a nice ending, and Jackson ended up at the bottom of the stairs. He shouldn't have said that, I'm going to die before you take that flag down. So actually, Tad Lincoln played with that flag. And actually, Ellsworth, because of the fame of the Zouaves, his fame, he will actually lay in state in the White House. So that kind of shows you these Zouaves are really impactful. Actually, in the South, they had a group of Zouaves known as the Iulkennau Zouaves, which traveled around. They all claimed they were veterans of the Crimean War. Of course, they all speak French, and it's really pretty amazing. So I have to tell you, to be a Zouave was the big thing. And so there were numerous Zouave regiments that are going to be founded both in the North and South. In New York, a wealthy mahogany trader and starch manufacturer, Abram Duryee, is going to be in the New York Volunteers before the war. And they're all coming down here to the peninsula. Wait a second, I want to get to him. Wow. So anyway, there he is, okay? And you can see he's in the New York State Militia. One of those medals is because he put down riots at 5 corners, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh. So he gets permission to organize a regiment, and that regiment is going to be called Duryee Zouaves, or also known as I know what I'm doing. So I apologize. Slides confuse me. And maybe this confuses me. So anyway, that's their uniform. This is the uniform of the 5th New York. And you can see they got a turban on. Under that, they have a fez. They got those baggy pants. And so this is what makes a soldier, is that uniform. So he founds the 5th New York, and actually it became a social requirement to enlist in that unit. You have lawyers, businessmen, social elite joining the Duryee Zouaves. One of them, James Taylor's father, was the founder of Citibank, and which I think we know about today. So, and he just becomes a but he doesn't care. They actually, many of these units the northern Zouaves are held to a strict moral code. One of the best ones is organized by John Butler, who used Ellsworth's concepts and is known as Syracuse Zouaves. And the Syracuse Journal noted, Captain Butler, in every discipline, has shown himself the model for his young comrades to copy, courteous, magnanimous, and kind. He has attracted his associates to him by the strongest bonds of friendship and respect. That unit left Syracuse with great fanfare. The ladies of Syracuse ran out and pinned little rosettes on the soldiers as they marched. Once again, they got the strange march. Well, I guess it's not strange. And their uniform was extremely exotic. And it composed with, of course, baggy red trousers with leggings, as you can see right there. And they had a very tight-fitted jacket, which was trimmed with yellow. And so they were as stylish as any unit could be. Well, we realized that they all come down to the peninsula, and so they will come to the peninsula that is actually under the command of this man, Benjamin Franklin Butler. Many of you all heard stories about him that I've told, but you know, he's a shyster lawyer, a slickster politician, okay? So Ben Butler is in command at Fort Monroe, of course, and this is where thousands of Union soldiers come down. In fact, the 5th New York, when they left New York, this is right before they entrain, they come down to Fort Monroe on the SS Alabama paddler, and as they march down Broadway, everyone's cheering and going, huzzah, and so forth. And the Delmonico's makes every one of them a steak sandwich. And so this is the elite. I know, wow. I wish I was there for that reason anyway. So the 5th New York is going to, you can see them drilling. This is at the Seeger Farm, which Joseph Seeger, state senator in Virginia, also owner of the Hygeia Hotel. And so here you go. This is a pretty interesting photograph. And you can see Abram Duryee in the beginning. There is Gouverneur Keble Warren, who becomes executive officer of the 5th New York, a really brilliant West Pointer. Look at them. They didn't always wear the turbans, but you know, this is a typical of, and there are tons of these units. So anyway, so the big showdown will take place on June 10, 1861, where Butler sends a force of 4,400 soldiers against the Confederate earthworks at Big Bethel. And there the 5th New York makes several charges. They're thrown back several times. They actually capture the forward redoubt, but then are pushed back, and basically they hide in this one house on the battlefield, and that with them is Judson Kilpatrick. They're shooting at the Confederates, and so Daniel Harvey Hill says, go burn that house. So he gets a bunch of men, he gives them hatchets and matches. Go get them. So they rush across the field, and all of a sudden they get a volley, and everyone drops down as they're supposed to. This is the 1st North Carolina Regiment. However, Henry Lawson Wyatt becomes the first Confederate enlisted man to die during the Civil War. And the shot that was fired by Judson Kilpatrick, who's also a West Pointer. He has joined to advance in rank. He had been wounded during one of the charges the Zouaves had, and believe it or not, he was wounded, I guess, in his posterior end. Although some people say, oh, that couldn't have happened. But yeah, they ran off the battlefield, you know. So anyway, so the Federals fail at Big Bethel in a major way. And this is one of the Zouave charges. And that's Big Bethel right there. And there's Judson Kilpatrick, later becomes a major general. And he is a crazy guy. And so, nevertheless, I have to tell you that the federal defeat at Big Bethel, one person will write a song. Me and Butler went out of camp at Bethel to make a battle. And then the Southrons whipped us back just like a drove of cattle. Come throw your swords and muskets down, you do not find him handy. At fighting, we're not so good, but at running, we're the dandy. Okay. So one Philip Wilson of the 5th New York says it's the most damn disgraceful retreat. Thomas Southwick says, we were blackened with powder and covered with dirt, but there is no laurel wreaths about their brows. Actually, James Taylor will be mortally wounded by one of his own comrades, and so his friend William Gilder, ever heard of the Gilder Foundation? Okay, see, these guys are really the socially elite. He's getting the cart, and James Taylor says, save the room for someone who can fight again. Leave me here to die. Wow, that's the spirit of the Zouaves. Now, I got to tell you, that's, of course, the executive officer of the 5th New York. But let's talk about these fellows. This is Lieutenant Colonel George August. Okay, that's not me. This is George Coppens, and I have to tell you, he has interesting history. He will actually go to Jefferson Davis, says, I want to create a Zouave regiment, and this George, I got to tell you, Coppens is from Dunkirk, France. His father is a baron. He's a baron in waiting, you know. And so what they do is they move to Martinique and they do sugar plantation and they have lots of slaves, enslaved people. And so when France says, well, we're stopping slavery, they then go to New Orleans and they're the top of the social elite. Why? Well, he went to the French Marine Academy. He was a noted duelist. He actually fought a duel with a theater critic. And the guy didn't like the play, and he says, this is terrible. And so either you take back those words or I will duel you. And they did. And fortunately, Coppens has better aim. And so anyway, so he actually, the governor of Louisiana is kind of mad at Coppens because he went straight to Jefferson Davis to get his commission to form his regiment. So, so what's going to happen is that they establish a Zouave rendezvous, and that's a recruiting office in a tobacco warehouse in the 3rd Ward. And I have to tell you, they start recruiting soldiers. And many of the volunteers, actually, they were allowed to set up a recruiting booth in New Orleans jails. Okay? Do you want to go to jail? Or you want to join Coppens Zouaves? I'll take the Zouaves, you know. And they were really the lowlifes. They would use a Bowie knife just because I didn't like the way you looked. And they're from the docks and the slums and the gutters. These are bad, bad people. But they're ready to fight. I got to tell you, as one Thomas DeLon said, when the battalion was finally ready to go, we were a splendid set of animals, graduates of the slums of New Orleans. Their education in villainy was naturally perfect, and small disputes were usually settled by the convincing argument of a Bowie knife. Yet they had been brought to a perfect state of drill and efficiency. All commands were given in French, the native tongue, nearly all the officers and men. So the officers of this unit are outstanding, such as I said, George Coppens is the commanding officer. His brother is right next to him. He becomes a company commander. We have people that fought in the Crimean War as officers. We have people like Vladimir Hillstadt from Switzerland, who actually fought in the Danish army, then fought with the French Zouaves in the Korean War, and then he comes to New Orleans and he gets to fight again, and so he's happy. So we have this multicultural people, and there are other Zouave regiments being formed in Louisiana. So I have to tell you, they actually, William Russell, the English correspondent, witnessed the officers' exclusive life and watched them seated at a very comfortable dinner with an abundance of champagne, claret, beer, and ice. They knew how to live. So anyway, the Coppens Zouaves, as they got ready to go, because they're training in Pensacola now, when they got ready to go to Richmond, they actually recruit two women that are known as vivandiers, and so they and they dress just like the Zouaves, and actually the newspapers in New Orleans said how wonderful, how smart they are to bring their own women with them. And they're supposed to be cleaning and things like that, but I won't go into the other stories. So there were several other units that are being founded at the same time: 2nd, 5th, 10th, and 14th Louisiana Volunteers, Coppens, of course, Battalion, and Drew. Charles Drew, who was a leading lawyer in New Orleans, he is going to form his own Zouave regiment. And so they all are in Pensacola, and now it's time to go where? To Richmond, right? This is the beginning of the war. So all these Zouaves go by train to the battlefields of Richmond, and as they went, they became wild with whiskey. Many sat atop the cars, making ring with the wild yells and the roaring chorus of the song of the Zouzous. And when the train stopped, they'd get off, and they raided all the towns for whiskey and whiskey and whiskey. The 14th Louisiana Zouaves was commanded by Colonel Valery Sudakowski, and it was called the Polish Regiment. He escaped Europe after the Revolution of 1848, and so his men are so wild that when they're going to Richmond, they get off in the train, and they're so wild with drink that Sudakowski has to shoot a couple of them just to settle them down, you know. And he didn't mind, you know, because they're trash from the slums, and so what are you going to do? Now, the great thing is, when they got into Richmond, Sally Putnam defined them as a calamity. Wherever a Zouave was seen, something was sure to be missing. The whole community drew a long breath of relief when they left. So they get sent down to the peninsula, and they actually join the brigade commanded by Lafayette McLaws, another West Pointer. And I have to tell you that there's some great stories that he writes his wife, and which there's a book published of his letters. And so he says that the Zouave units have a reputation of being the most lawless in existence. He added that the 1st Louisiana was on Mulberry Island for 12 hours, and during that time, 'tis said, ate up everything on the island but the horses and their own species. So, you know, he also added that one Zouave was hiding and seeing a pig come along, and he's just waiting for that pig to get close. And so all of a sudden, a North Carolina soldier will pop out and just shoot the pig. And, so the Zouave pops up and he says, the Zouave is not the only one who shoots the pig. Someone else is the damn rascal besides. And Benjamin Smith of the 5th Louisiana will say, I loaded my musket once or twice with the expectation of hurting someone. As for my bayonet, it had only been stained by the blood of an unfortunate pig who was foolish enough to tempt a hungry soldier. I devoutly hope that he was a Yankee pig. So these guys are crazy. And actually, Magruder has to, Magruder, the master of ruses and strategy, is a party down person. In fact, after the Battle of Big Bethel, he is sent a letter by Robert E. Lee from Jefferson Davis saying, we're ready to promote you to Brigadier General, but you got to stop your drinking, And to which Magruder says, I have not allowed a sip of intoxicating liquors to pass my lips since this war began, and I'll never shall do so again. Spirituous liquors are not for me. Well, so what does he do? He drinks champagne all day long. And actually, eventually, he will use, he has a nervous condition after the Peninsula Campaign, and so he will take brandy with laudanum. And so he was always ready to go, 6'4", appeared everywhere at a gallop, talking incessantly, despite having a slight lisp. He was the master of the Old Dominion. And so they thought he was pretty good. So, there's all this skirmishing that's happened. Actually, Colonel Charles Drew is going to be killed in one skirmish. There are other Louisiana regiments that, of course, don't all serve on the peninsula. This is Rabidou Wheat. I gotta tell you, this guy is crazy, 6'6". He's in command of the Tiger Zouaves because of the striped pants. They were wild, and because he's so big, his father was an Episcopal minister, he could keep them all in order. Well, the trouble is, at first Bull Run, he gets shot through the lungs. They say, you're going to die. He says, no, I'm not. And so he continues to serve until at Gaines Mill, he is going to be shot in the stomach and dies. And his unit will be added to Coppens Zouaves. Oh, my gosh. And so I have to tell you, life on the peninsula, Colonel Drew tries to lay a trap for the Union right near where we are right now. It is actually at the end of Cedar Road. And so Drew sets up this trap, and here comes the Yankees, or Union soldiers, coming down the road. And so unfortunately, there's a rattlesnake, and we've got called canebrake rattlers, and they're big and nasty. And so the guy shoots the rattlesnake just as Drew walks out, and Drew is shot and killed. He was the first senior officer, field grade officer killed during the Civil War from the Confederates. As one person wrote, Colonel Drew's death was mourned by those who knew him on account of his bravery and high military genius. He actually had written a letter to his wife with a premonition of death. The boys are delighted with the prospects before them, and we all in the highest glee. May the God of battles smile upon us. Cheer up, dear wife. I have the brave, noble sons that will sustain and cheer me on, and I feel confident of the result. Many a noble son may fall by my side, and I may be the first to bite the dust, but rest assured, I will always be worthy of the esteem and respect of our country's men. Wow, I don't know if I would like to get that letter, but anyway. So actually, these soldiers are living on the peninsula, and despite being from a humid climate in New Orleans, they have a lot of problems. Actually, Zouaves had thought they were in a land of plenty. They had oyster eating contests, saying whether Warwick River or Lynnhaven River, or what have you, are the best oysters. And they left mounds of oysters when they left the peninsula. The Federals all go, they ate better than we did, you know. One soldier wrote home, I'm living and growing fat on oysters and soft shell crabs. However, the musketeers or mosquitoes swarmed around in clouds, and that caused a great deal of sickness, camp fever, and so forth. The death of one poor soldier is hardly noticed. It seems to me that it was noticed no more than that if a dog died. So he sets one unit to become so this is, of course, the peninsula. We can see where Big Bethel is. We can also see, oh, wow. They're going to be camped on near Young's Mill, and then also up in York County near Dare. So, and you can see Mulberry Island. No more cattle, no more pigs, no more squirrels after the Zouaves came. And so, you know, they were just into it. So one unit will be, oops, that's one. This is another Zouave unit. This is commanded by Rush Hawkins. And he's commander of the 9th New York, called Hawkins Zouaves. He's married into this great fortune, and so he buys everybody their own uniforms, and you know, he's kind of a dandy, and he will actually serve at Camp Butler, not far from here, and then during the Battle of Roanoke Island, where his Zouaves, you know, they got their own press corps with them. And so as they attack, they shout, zoo, 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 and they claim they captured the battery. Actually, it had already been captured, but the newspapers say, oh my gosh, Hawkins Zouaves, how brave and daring they could be. So we'll see that, yeah, I mean, if you had to join the war, wouldn't you like to wear that uniform? Now, I just want to ask you, I know I would. I actually wore, you know, Nantucket red pants and a blue blazer, so I kind of have the Zouave look for you all. But I don't think I paired it off well. Yeah, this is Zouaves in camp. There's some at the Hampton River Bridge. Oh my gosh, these guys are fierce fighters, and they don't know fear, right? So they are shock troops whenever they fight. I have to tell you that, of course, Prince John Magruder has all these parties everywhere, drinking champagne. And so there's a ball in Williamsburg where the great Magruder, the great paragon of virtue and sobriety, General Magruder, was so drunk that he fell from the arm of the whore he was dancing with and would have burnt to death had he not been pulled by the fire from one of his orderlies. During the 1862 Mardi Gras series, a baby-faced Zouave from Coppens battalion, his name is Billy Campbell, and he dresses himself up as a woman and strode into the ball of the arms of another Zouave. And Magruder takes look, and he was introduced as an unmarried sister. The gallant Magruder quickly took the lady's hand and began entertaining Campbell with food, drink, and lively conversation. Meanwhile, many of the other Zouaves went upstairs and they got the feather pillows and they rained him down through the cracks in the floor, and they all shouted, it's a Louisiana snowstorm. And so now these guys are very rakish and so forth, and as we know, there's Magruder again. This is Fort Crawford. You know, Coppens Zouaves was assigned here for long enough for them to eat up everything. And this is the water battery that Company B of the Coppens Zouaves will actually serve in. The Battle of Williamsburg. Coppens Zouaves are in the reserve behind Fort Magruder. So I have to tell you that the Battle of Williamsburg will begin skirmishing on May 4th, and then it comes in reality on May 5th. Now, it's a terrible battle. Over 3,500 people are casualties during the battle. And as the Confederate Army retreated out of Williamsburg, they passed several captured, wounded Union soldiers who'd been laid out along the roadside. One young French soldier, shot through the abdomen, pleaded to be killed to stop his suffering. A Zouave dropped out of line to join a group gathering around the wounded man. He asked him, according to Robert Stiles, "Put you out of your misery?" "Certainly, sir," and then smashed the Federal head with a shot from his musket. The Confederates surrounding the scene backed away by this horrific act by this demon. Untroubled, Zouave asked the other wounded men, "Any other gentlemen here like to be accommodated?" And he got no for an answer. Actually, the Zouave units are a flamboyant addition to the Civil War. They were shock troops in both. Wait, I don't want to go there yet. They were really harsh shock troops, and as you can see, here they are, being shot down the battlefield. Actually, Colonel Coppens is going to be killed at the Battle of Antietam. He actually goes from the command of his battalion to command the 2nd Florida Regiment, and leading a charge, he is killed in the cornfield. So that's not very good. And but they left a legacy. In fact, the Zouaves, both in the Confederate and Union Army, and I got to tell you, all states had Zouaves. Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. I mean, they really recruited, and they knew who to recruit, like in New Orleans, who? The guys who were handy with a Bowie knife, and they knew they were ready to fight. But I have to tell you, their casualties were significant. Many units are going to be merged with others because of the casualty rate. But, in essence, Zouaves they founded units in Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, also Virginia. And so this was the way to, I just don't want to wear that gray uniform. I want to be a Zouave. I bring women with me as I go into battle. I march in a way that is so, as they actually trail their musket as they march with this. You can look up the French Foreign Legion and see how they march. And it's really amazing beyond all compare. And so what happens is that by 62, these baggy pants, right, will kind of wear out. And so most of the Zouaves will get traditional uniforms. And so, but the remembrance of like the Coppens Zouaves coming into Richmond and they arrive drunk to a man, and just think they lived off of crackers, cheese, and whiskey, not just whiskey, but more whiskey. And so they were a rowdy group, but they were elite shock troops until, because of their aggressiveness, they, suffer great casualties. So that's a couple stories about the Zouaves on the Virginia Peninsula. Does anyone have any questions?